Hello, Algebra 1. Today we are talking about graphing parallel and perpendicular lines and understanding when we have parallel and perpendicular lines. So parallel lines are something that we've already seen when we were graphing linear equations and finding no solution, so we should know that parallel lines never touch. However, something related to what we are talking about now with parallel lines is that this means that parallel lines always have the same slope. Perpendicular lines, you may recall this word from middle school. Perpendicular lines are lines that form what we call a right angle or a 90-degree angle. Perpendicular lines have what's called opposite reciprocal slopes. Now, these are two words that people mess up all the time, so let's talk about what they mean. Opposite means that we're changing signs from a positive to a negative or a negative to a positive. Reciprocal means that you're taking your fraction and you're going to flip it over. When we do the opposite reciprocal, we're doing both of these things. Okay, so usually I do the reciprocal part first. For example, the reciprocal of 4/5 is 5/4. Now I do the opposite part. This number is a positive, so the opposite is a negative. This is the opposite reciprocal. All right, let's try it again. Take the reciprocal. So it'll be 3/1, change your negative to a positive. So this is our answer, or you could write it as 3. Now, when you have a number that is not a fraction, remember there's always a 1 underneath it. So when we do our reciprocal of 1/1, guess what? It's still a 1/1. Make sure you change it to a negative though, and then if you want, you can rewrite it as just -1. This makes more of a difference when you have a number like 8. Remember to put your 1 underneath. The reciprocal of 8 is 1/8. And again, since this is a positive, we also need to change this to a negative. All right, if you already have a fraction, it's a little easier. Just flip it. And again, change the sign. Negative becomes a positive. All right, that's how we find the opposite reciprocal. So let's give this a try. Here is our function rule in slope-intercept form. Notice that it's y equals. That means m is going to be right here. So that's my slope. Now, the parallel slope, meaning the slope of a parallel line, is always the same as our original slope. So our parallel slope is also just 5. Okay? However, if we have a perpendicular line, this is when we're going to do the opposite reciprocal. So we're going to flip our 5 to become 1/5, and our 5 is a positive, and so our 1/5 will become a negative. All right, let's take a look at this again. This is still in slope-intercept form. However, you're going to notice that this time the mx comes last. Your m is still the 5/4. It's whatever with x. Again, your parallel slope is the exact same thing. And our perpendicular slope, we have to go ahead and flip it and change the sign. So again, it was a positive. Now it becomes a negative. All right, this next one, our slope is a -1, which means our parallel slope has to be the same. But remember, this is like a 1/1. So when we flip it, it's still a 1/1, but becomes a positive. So it's actually just 1. Now, this last one we have to be careful with. You're going to notice you have more space here, and that's because this equation is not in slope-intercept form. So remember, you cannot identify your slope until you are in slope-intercept form. So we are going to have to start off by solving for y. That's why you have all this space. Subtract your 4x on each side. Bring down your -10y. All right, now we're going to divide by -10. And then always simplify. So you can math frac. This becomes a positive 2/5x. -90 divided by -10 is +9. Now we're in slope-intercept form, and now we can go ahead and identify our slope. M is 2/5. Parallel slope is always the same. Perpendicular slope, we are flipping, changing our positive to a negative. All right, so that's how we go ahead and we determine what our slope, our parallel slope, and our perpendicular slope are. Now let's look at 3 sets of equations and see if we can figure out whether these lines are parallel, perpendicular, or neither. So again, the key thing is to check your slopes. Make sure you are in slope-intercept form before you go ahead and do that. So our first equation is y equals. That means we can identify our slope. But the second equation, we're going to need to go ahead and divide everything by 15 first. Make sure you use your calculator. Negative 10 over 15 simplifies to negative 2/3. Don't forget your x. 60 divided by 15 is 4. Now that we're in slope-intercept form, you can see that your second slope is also negative 2/3. These slopes are the same, which means our lines would be parallel. All right, let's try it again. First equation, y equals. All right, so I'm in slope-intercept form. My m is 1/5. Now, my second equation, I still need to solve for y. So I will add my 5x over. Y equals, remember, you can't combine these, just bring your 5x down and then minus 32. Now we can see that our slope is 5. Now, be careful. These are flipped, but in order for this to be perpendicular, you also need one to be a positive and one to be a negative. This is not the case, and so we say that these are neither parallel or perpendicular. Okay, it's not either of those options. All right, our last one, you don't have a y equals for either, so we are going to have to go ahead and solve for y for both. We'll start by subtracting our x over. That's going to give us y equals negative x plus 9. Remember, that's really a negative 1 for your slope. Now let's try it again. This one, in order to solve for y, we're going to start by subtracting 5x. That gives us negative 5y equals negative 5x plus 10. And now we're going to go ahead and divide by negative 5. Negative 5 divided by negative 5 is positive 1. Don't forget your x. And then minus 2. That means our slope is 1. Now, this one you have to be careful with because it does not seem like they are opposite reciprocals. But remember, 1 is really 1 over 1. So when you look at it, they are actually flipped because the top and bottom are the same, and one is positive and one is negative, which makes this perpendicular. Now let's try the same thing, but from a table. Remember, when we find our slope, you're really just looking at your jumps, and this is going to be change in y over change in x. So this is up 10 and up 8. Make sure you put that y on top, and then always reduce. This will be 5/4. All right, now we're going to do the same thing on the side. This is up 5. This is up 4. This is also 5/4. They are the same number. Slopes are the same. Lines are parallel. Let's try one more time. Up 3, down 2. All right. Now, I know the 2 has the negative, but really, I'm just going to usually put it on top. Otherwise, I feel like we lose it. And then we have up 2, up 3, positive 2/3. All right, so let's look at our relationship. They are flipped. One is positive, one is negative. This is perpendicular. All right, the last thing we're going to do with our lesson today is we're going to draw a parallel line to the given line through the point 5, negative 8. Okay, there are 2 things you need to do before we can do this correctly. First is you got to plot that point. So 5, negative 8 is right 5, down 8. All right, so that's the first step. If we want our lines to be parallel, we know that means we need the same slope, which means we need to figure out the slope of this line. We do that by going up and over. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and over 3. So that is my slope. It does not simplify. And now I'm going to do the same thing with this line. I'm going to go up 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and over 3. And then you are just going to draw your line. All right, last one. Draw a line parallel to the given line through the point negative 3, 5. So again, make sure you plot that point. Negative 3, 5. All right, up there. Now, if we want a parallel line, we need the same slope. So we're going to find the slope of this line. Down 1, over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So our slope is negative 1 over 6. So you are going to do the same thing. Down 1, over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Down 1, over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then carefully draw your line with arrows. Oops. Hopefully your line goes through all 3 dots. All right, that is how we graph parallel and learn about perpendicular lines. I hope you have a great day. Bye.